Thanks for joining us Behind the Frontline, a podcast providing timeless solutions to everyday workforce and workplace challenges. Frontline Training Solutions is an express employment professionals company, strategically placed between the workplace and the workforce with professionals standing by, ready to combat your unique challenges. Learn more about what we do at frontlineon.com. Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Frontline with Frontline Training Solutions. My name is Nic Dampier. I'm the creative director here at Frontline, and I am so delighted to be sitting in the studio today with one of my dearest friends, Lorraine Medici, who's director of training and development. And today we're having a follow-up conversation to a webinar that we just did. It's archived free on the website on coaching, and we're going to be talking all things coaching, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
I'm very excited.
Yes, yeah. I love it.
So before we get started, Lorraine, why don't you just kind of kick us off and kind of hit the highlights of what that webinar was about?
Yeah, so we wanted to, coaching, as you know, is a very big topic. And to start the new year off, we thought it'd be important to give some very tangible tools to our listeners. And so we kicked off with looking at open-ended questions as a tool. We looked at understanding that there are different stages that people go through when they're experiencing barriers, and those are hill, will, and skill. And just briefly, hill are those barriers that come around where I don't really have control. So it might be an organization has a policy or procedure. I don't like it. It might stop me or impede me from doing what I want to do. And how do I work through that? The will part is more, am I struggling with either confidence and or motivation? And a leader needs to understand what's going on that way. And then lastly is skill. Maybe I just don't have the skill set to carry out on the task. And then the last tool that we talked about was a developmental wheel tool, where it's a very collaborative way to get your people involved in having them rate themselves on different skills. And then the leader does that too. They compare it, and if there's some big discrepancies, they have an opportunity to discuss. So we thought it'd be good to do this as a follow-up. I think there were some questions, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There were a few questions. There was a lot of feedback around the hill will skill, and a lot of people resonated with that and needing to know that information.
Yeah.
And if you are interested in the follow-up take home skills,
with the development
wheel. If you're interested in that, reach out to us at contact@frontlineon.com. We'd love to send that to you free of charge, of course.
Yeah.
We did have some questions.
Okay.
And one of them, so when leaders say, my employees don't listen to me, what does that usually reveal about how the leader is communicating? And what kind of coaching question could shift that dynamic immediately?
Yeah, I hear that a lot in our leadership classes, for sure. They don't listen to me. They don't care what I'm saying. Typical responses like that. I think the first thing that should happen if I were a leader and I heard that is to get very curious. What does that mean? What is it that I'm demonstrating? What is it that I'm saying or not saying that's leading you to believe that I'm not listening to you? Mm-hmm. So instead of getting defensive and reactive or justifying, I think we first need to stop and be curious enough to go, didn't know I was doing that, but I'd love to hear it from your point of view. What is it that you're saying that I'm doing or not doing?
Mm-hmm. I took Lorraine's, one of our classes here, Developing Coaching Leaders, 4 years ago, somewhere around there, around 2021, 2022. And the aspect of curiosity is something that I'd heard before, but it's never something I valued. And I actually made it one of my core values. It was my word for last year. I really challenged myself to be curious with anything that is triggering me.
Yes.
Rather than just getting furious. That was your tagline, curious, not furious. Rather than getting upset about something, getting curious around it, and then asking the right questions to figure out the basis behind it, or just how to get over it. And part of that was open-ended questions, and that's a part of coaching.
Yes.
So I'd love for you to explain that. Mm-hmm. But also, how do open-ended questions change the power dynamic in a conversation compared to telling, correcting, or re-explaining expectations?
So I think because there's so many different definitions, understandings, assumptions around coaching. True coaching, with specifically around open-ended questions, immediately engages back and forth.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, there is a time and a place where I need to train you. I need to give you steps, tell you what you need to do. But most of the time, we are not really engaged with the person. We're having a lot of monologues, right? And we think we had a conversation. So when we start actually using open-ended questions, I'm inviting you in. I'm saying I'm curious enough to hear what you're thinking, what you're feeling about a certain situation. And it starts to give me information as maybe the leader to go, I didn't realize that. Tell me more about that. So it's a whole different approach when you ask questions that elicit more than yes, no, I don't know, maybe types of answers.
Absolutely. Can you tell us the difference? Because you also mentioned in the webinar, clarifying questions, barrier questions, a bunch of different types of questions. Can you explain what the difference between those are?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's important to first say that an open-ended question is one that typically starts with what, how, why, help me understand, share with me, give me an example. Close-ended questions are the ones that are going to elicit those short answers. Yes,
no,
you're right.
yeah.
Did you, could you, would you, that kind of thing. Now, a lot of times questions that we ask are trying to gain understanding and of the puzzle pieces of a story. So the clarifying bucket will ask questions that help me understand your story, what was going on. The second bucket are the barrier questions. And those questions are ones I'm going to ask you about things that are potentially getting in the way of you accomplishing something or preventing you from doing something. What's stopping you? What's hindering you? Whether it's a performance issue or even maybe an attitude or behavior.
Mm-hmm.
The third bucket are action questions. And that's really where we help the employee to really think about how do I take personal accountability, responsibility, and ownership for changing behaviors or performance. The problem is we tend to be so fixated on getting changes, Nic, like I just need you to get this done, that we start off really good questions on clarifying and we move somebody right away to action questions without really stopping to go, well, wait a minute, what stopped you in the first place? Because the whole idea, right, is to set them up for success so that that behavior doesn't continue to go on.
Absolutely. What would be a good example of when to ask a clarifying question or when to ask a barrier question or just even moving in between them? What would
You want to
look like?
practice a little bit? You want to do it?
I think so.
Want to do it a little more?
You know what? I actually showed up a little frustrated today because I was delayed from schedule. I was delayed from weather. The roads were icy. So I was feeling a bit triggered. It's not necessarily a situation where I can just get curious with the weather,
Yes.
you know? So I am a bit triggered already, upset. Maybe you could coach me through that and show what that would look like.
Okay. So, okay.
It's a real example.
Yeah, so we're going to be really vulnerable. I was going to pick something different, but this is good. This is real-time stuff. All right. So Nic, it sounds like our time to do the podcast got bumped today. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I had a expected schedule in my mind on the calendar. I'm ready to come in, but I wasn't thinking through what my wife or my children's schedule looked like. I wasn't thinking through the factor of the weather conditions on the road. Mm-hmm. And I left later than I was supposed to, which put me in a huge stress.
Yeah. Especially with this weather, right? We've had just crazy weather. So let me just kind of do a little editorial comment. So when I asked you the question about what happened here today. That's an example of a clarifying, because I'm trying to understand what your story, right? So I might ask a little bit more, and I might say, so Nic, it sounds like, and what I'm doing right now is paraphrasing. Sometimes we call that reflective listening. So it sounds like with the weather, you've got your schedule and your wife's schedule and the kids' schedule. We just we lost track of time. What else was going on today that might have contributed?
I was feeling frustrated because if it was just me needing to go somewhere, then I would probably have gotten over it quicker.
Yeah.
But I was frustrated because then it's your time as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel very respectful of your time.
Okay. Yeah.
And so time's a big value of mine.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was, yeah.
And I think respect is too. I know, knowing you was a close friend. So, okay. So we had some bumps in the road. The biggest barriers for you were, that I heard, and so I've heard, is that I didn't take into account maybe of everybody's schedules. What else do you think potentially could have gotten in the way?
Probably could have organized my schedule a little bit more efficiently this morning. I'm feeling very vulnerable right now.
Oh, you are? Oh, that's hard. That's so what Nic just did right now is gave himself a different action step. So I asked you a barrier question, and you went into an action. Did you hear yourself do that? Okay. So when you think of any other barriers, let me go back to that. I just want to make sure that we're covering all our bases.
Yeah, I can't think of any other barriers that would have gotten in the way. I
maybe some communication.
Yeah, I could have. I could have left earlier. Could have communicated schedules better.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's say we got to do a podcast, because I know you do, with somebody else or myself, whatever, in the future. And let's say it's still winter, because it'll probably still be winter in March. Most hopefully not this bad. What might be some different action steps that you'll take?
I will be coordinating schedules and checking the weather.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have an hour drive to get here.
Yeah, which that's a big piece too. So specifically, I want you to go a little bit more into specifics when you say coordinating schedules. What's that going to look like?
Yeah. So I will communicate earlier with my wife and her schedule and the kids' schedules, and make sure that everyone's on the same page with my schedule, and make sure that plans are made and arranged, and that I'm allowing enough time to get here with my schedule.
Okay. All right.
That's good.
Yeah. So again, that was a little bit of I know. Thank you for being so vulnerable. But could you hear the clarifying? I've been trying to gather information, trying to get the big picture, then trying to go into what got in the way. Although you were pretty helpful in saying, with the weather and schedules, but I wanted to make sure that I still left you some room to go, what else might have been in the way?
Right.
And quite honestly, that is one of the best questions that you can ask. Once somebody answers that question, go ahead and say, what else?
Yeah.
What else? They call that the awe question.
Yeah.
From The Coaching Habit, a book that's a wonderful book. And it just allows you to kind of keep trimming down to, and I don't know if you felt that or not.
I did. It definitely had me thinking and spinning of what else could there be. So let me ask you a question. When you're in that conversation and you're asking those clarifying and those barrier questions, and you ask what else, at what point do you know that you got to the root of the issue?
Oh, that's good. Great question. It is not uncommon for me to ask, and what else? Sometimes 3 or 4 times, because I can tell, watching somebody, and that, again, that's part of being a really good coaching leader, is to be watching body language and listening to the words that people, and the energy, right? And they're like, wow, yeah, there was this going on, and and so there's this sense of energy going on. And I think eventually somebody will run out of steam, and they'll go, boy, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's it. At that time, a good leader will go, okay, so Nic, here's what I heard you say. And I'm going to repeat back those different pieces that you shared with me. And then I might even say, when you look at those, 4 or 5 different barriers, what do you think are the 2 top ones that are the most critical?
Mm-hmm. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Why do I say that's
Yeah.
good? I think it's too easy as leaders to ask what's wrong, hear what's wrong, and then say, okay,
Oh, okay. Good.
that's it.
Yeah.
So I like the what else. I like the clarifying questions because a lot of times, I mean, how many times have you, the listener, been asked someone what's wrong? And they say, well, nothing, I'm fine. And they're like, okay,
Yeah,
good.
exactly. Yeah.
Get back to work.
And if I ask you, you shared 5 different things with me and you identified these 2 as being most critical. My next question is, why did you identify those 2? Why are those? Because from that, you're going to share with me, this means something to me, right?
Yeah.
It's usually a value that's being in conflict yeah.
So I want to get back to what you talked about in the webinar on hill, skill, and will.
Yeah.
And specifically red flags. There's supposed to be red flags in a leader. So what are some red flags that a leader is trying to solve the wrong problem, not asking the right questions, because they haven't properly diagnosed the hill, will, or skill?
That's good. Very good question. And again, you've got to keep in mind what those 3 are. Right. Hill means there's something going on external to the person that they don't feel like they have control over, and you usually don't. Will is, again, there's either a confidence or motivation, and skill is obviously I don't have the hard skills to be able to do this. Not only hard skills. So red flags would be if you're in a conversation. This is an interesting conversation, Nic, because I was just coaching somebody this morning that I was thinking, wow, I'm thinking this person is really struggling with all 3. And I was feeling not very fluid. I was really kind of doubting some of my coaching questions at the time, because what I found is every time I was asking a question, there was either a story that was given or a deflection, which normal deflection is going to happen all the time. It was really hard for me to get the person back to what we needed to focus on. So some red flags are that they cannot articulate what it is, whether it's hill, will, or skill.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing a lot of deflection. It feels chaotic. It doesn't feel like there's almost, they can identify those barriers very quickly. They're sort of all over the place. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we'll have a conversation and you think you're in a good place. And then when you meet again, let's say for a one-on-one, it's like, what happened? We just had this conversation 2 weeks ago. So I think at that time you need to regroup. Okay. And you might just start with hill questions. Here's some examples of hill questions. So you might say something, when you think about your role, your current role, and the culture that is in it, what do you think are some things that the organization or the culture might be doing that you feel are impeding in the success of your job? Do you see how that is a hill question?
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? Or what policies and procedures do you think are in place right now that you think, again, impede carrying out your responsibilities? Because right away, then you would answer and say, well, I don't like this particular policy. Okay, then we now can talk about that. All right, let's move on to will. This one is kind of an easier one because I love to use scaling questions, as you know. And a scaling question, I might we'll just do this as fun, not vulnerable. Okay. So if I said to you, Nic, what is your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10 to sing out in public life? Okay. You sing your favorite song. What's your confidence level? 10 being, oh, all day long I could do that. 1 being, let me find the biggest hole to just jump in and escape.
Asking for real?
Yeah.
I think it depends on where in the public, but probably a 6.
A 6?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
think I would
Okay.
stay by a 6.
Okay. So taking curiosity, I'm going to take that next step and I'm going to say, what made you give yourself a 6?
I'm very used to singing in front of people.
Okay.
So for 20 years, I was on a stage in front of a microphone, very used to doing it. However, that's an organized space. And in public, if I'm just at Walmart,
Okay.
that would be much different. So
That'd be scary.
I'd probably, my confidence level that I could do it would be about a 6.
Okay.
Whether or not I really would.
Okay, which gets different. So look at that. Just from the fact that I asked you where you were, I was expecting you to say something much lower because I didn't have that knowledge that you have been on stage, well, in different capacities, but not for singing for 20 years. So I just gained knowledge as to why you gave yourself a 6. Okay, so let's just pretend you're in a choir and I say, okay, 6 is, it's above average. What would it take to get you to like an 8 to feel your confidence level be at an 8? What would need to change or transpire?
I don't know. Probably a little liquid courage.
Oh, okay, liquid courage. Yeah.
Probably.
Okay, yeah. To relax a little bit, or maybe just doing it more often.
Doing it more often, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so, experience there.
Right. So you notice that I didn't say what is it going to take you to get to a 10? I just tried to bump you up a couple of notches.
Right.
Baby steps. Right. All right. So that's confidence. You said something. Well, I might have some confidence. I don't know if I'd want to do it. That's motivation. So I'm going to ask you the same question. What's your motivation level to sing in public or in an organized stage event? 10 being all day long, 1 being no thank you.
Yeah.
Where are you at?
You asked 2 different things there. So in public, just random public, a 1.
A 1.
Yeah. If I'm on stage and I'm expecting to do it, then yeah, I'll do it 9, 10.
Oh, okay. So your motivation is actually higher than your confidence level, even in an organized space.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to ask you the same question. Why did you give yourself a 9 for motivation? For being motivated?
Because I'm used to it. I know what to expect.
Okay. Okay. So familiarity breeds some of that ability to go. Okay. All right. What makes you give yourself a 1 on being motivated to speak at Walmart?
To sing out loud in public in Walmart?
Yeah.
Because I like to be a fly on the wall.
Okay.
I'm not going to disrupt anyone else's day.
Okay.
I think that goes back to the respect. I'm not going to disrespect anyone's time there.
Okay.
No one wants to hear me sing.
Okay. So do you see, even on that, it's a silly kind of example, but I gained information. The scaling questions are obviously helpful for you, but they're especially helpful for me if I'm your leader. Okay. To ask a scaling question and your confidence and motivation.
Yeah.
Skill level, I'm going to ask you the same question. On a scale 1 to 10, what's your skill level in actually being able to sing well?
True.
What maybe others have said, or
I would say for myself, maybe a 7.
Okay.
Maybe.
And why do you give yourself a 7?
Because I had a lot of experience doing it. Yeah. I'm not the best, but I can carry it.
Would you say it would be fair to say that you have some natural talent to sing?
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, 7's a good number. Yeah. Now, if you asked me that question, I'd say I am highly motivated to sing, but I am terrible. I just have no talent in singing. So does that help with the...
It does. Yeah. What I also heard in there a lot was your curiosity showing out. So I definitely want to circle back around to that, especially when it comes to hill wheel skill, how important being curious is. Because if you're not a curious leader, then you're not going to go through the trouble of asking stuff like that, right?
Yeah. So
when it comes to staying curious, let's throw an example. That was a lighthearted example.
Yeah.
Let's throw an example when behavior is frustrating.
Yeah.
So let's say you're with a direct and they are frustrating you. We all have our trigger points. We can all be below the line, as you've said before. How do we stay curious in those moments to increase accountability and trust and foster a good open conversation rather than just, letting it go or just letting people off the hook or whatever it may be, just because we're frustrated or they're frustrated or we're not getting to the bottom. How can staying curious help with that situation?
So that's really good, because I like how you said either we just give up and just like forget it, it's taking too much effort and energy, or we lose our cool, right? So sometimes when I'm sitting across from somebody who's very frustrating and they're not really engaging well, not really thinking, being thoughtful in their answers, I think it's important to use another coaching skill, which is validating. And and when I mean validating, I don't necessarily mean I agree with how you're behaving, but what I might say is something like, so Nic, what I'm seeing right now is that you're very frustrated. I hear a lot of blaming going on, that you're, pointing fingers here. I also hear that you're struggling maybe to get answers or resources here. So again, what I want to try to do is help you to really focus. What do you think the real challenge is here?
That's good.
So if you noticed even how I asked that question, my cadence changed and how I really emphasized real challenge. So again, you said, how do I stay curious and not lose my cool? That takes a lot of work, right? And I have to also realize that how they're behaving is generally because they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Was there any, is there a situation where maybe tensions are high? I mean, leaders are humans too.
Of course.
Let's say that you and I lead you and you're having a conversation and what you just said is very troubling to me.
Yeah.
Is there ever a situation where it's appropriate to say, hey, why don't we regroup on this next week?
Yeah.
So I personally, I know what my trigger points are. I need to take the time to process this so I can come at this very cool, calm, and collected.
Absolutely. If you're catching yourself that triggered where you're thinking the next words that come out of my mouth are going to be more harmful than beneficial, I think I think what you just said is to say, you know what? I think at this point, we've got some heightened emotions going on from both sides, maybe, and I've got a lot of processing to do, and I think you do too. I would like to kind of put a pause on this, put a pin on this until tomorrow. I wouldn't wait like a week, because then you're both walking around festering with that, and then let's regroup where we can have some de-escalation and really have some much more productive conversation.
No, that's fantastic. So let's say that happens.
Yeah.
What are your tips or tricks to coaching or being curious with yourself? So let's say if I, and we've talked about this for years because we've known each other for a long time. I have gotten into the self-discovery phase of, this is a trigger for me. Why? And then I need to go think about that. That way, when it comes up again, I'm a little bit more prepared to understand this is going to be a problem for me, and I can stay a little more calm.
Yeah.
So rather than just pause, let's take some time to cool off.
Yeah.
Using that time as a leader to get curious with yourself. Is there a situation where that's appropriate, or would you suggest that that leader goes and finds another leader and discusses it, or their leader, or a coach? What would be a good example of how that could look like?
Well, I think you answered your own question, is that when you get triggered, and you know this very well, is that when we get triggered, it stems from the fact that there's a value that sits under that trigger that's being compromised. The complicated, interesting part of human beings is you have a set of values, I have a set of values. We probably share some, but there's going to be others where we don't share, right? And you'd be like, why does that bother you, Lorraine? And I'm like, well, why doesn't that bother you, Nic? Right? Because for me, it really has value to it. And for you, it's like, it's not that big of a deal. So one of the things I think is right is to go, why am I being triggered right now? What value is feeling threatened so that it's causing me to escalate? Now you said, do I go talk to somebody? Sure. If you feel that you can't get above the line and really de-escalate yourself, it probably sounds like you need a friend, somebody that you can rely on to go, I just need to vent. What is it that I'm not seeing, thinking, that can get me to a good place with this person?
Yeah. And I thought of that because there have been situations in our work experience where you're frustrated with something and you come talk to me, or I'm frustrated with something and I come talk to you. Lorraine is the person that I lean on.
Yeah. Well, and I've come to you a lot of times too. how does that sound?
Yeah.
Here's what we notice about triggers. We spin. I always call it being in the spin cycle, and we just can't seem to get out of that spin cycle, and it just keeps feeding the same messages, right? And then we're not very helpful or beneficial for somebody else. Yep.
That's good. So let's talk about the person we are coaching.
Yeah.
So let's say I figured it out. I'm calm. I'm collected. What would you say and I know the answer to this question, but what would you say the main goal of coaching would be to the person, creating self-reliant problem solvers, right? So instead of being dependent on me for everything, I want them to be dependent on themselves. They have the answers to the questions. How can explain how these coaching conversations help do that? Create self-reliant problem solvers.
Well, yeah. Again, I think a lot of it comes from those 3 buckets questions, right? I'm asking clarifying questions, and now I'm thinking, okay, I think I got a good picture. And a lot of times before I bump into the barrier questions, I will revisit and go, okay, Nic, let me just make sure I'm really tracking with you. And so I'm going to repeat the story. Here's what I heard you say. This is what I think you're feeling from what you're telling me. And then I move into those barrier questions, right? To go deeper to find out what's really getting away. A lot of times when you're in the barrier questions, you'll find yourself going back into clarifying questions, okay? The whole point, though, is when people visit the barrier questions, that's where they get their ahas. That's where they kind of go, yeah, that is kind of getting in the way. Oh, yeah, that really is important to me. Yeah, I never thought about how that could be an obstacle. And then by then asking the questions, okay, so Nic, so you've identified some of the issues here. It's, this is a barrier, this is a barrier, this is an obstacle. When you think about moving forward, what could you do differently? I think the action questions, it's important to use words like, as opposed to just saying, so what do you want to do? Versus what do you want to do differently? Right. I don't know. Did you feel that a little bit of a shift? Differently all of a sudden means you got to jump out of your box of what you've been doing. And now I got to be thinking about what could be different. So it spurns on opportunities and options, right? So you've got that. Another thing that I like, what can you commit to doing? Especially if you're talking about performance. How will you honor those commitments? When I ask somebody, how will you honor those commitments? I'm asking you to give me specific measurable steps that feed into that commitment. And I think that's how you get people to think on their own. And then I'm going to say, hey, Nic, I think these are really good ideas. So what I hear you saying, you're going to do X, Y, and Z. So let's talk in a couple weeks, see where you're at. I'd love to hear what your progress is. In other words, we need to treat adults like adults. We don't need to parent them.
That's good.
I think that's important to remember.
Let's say you're in a conversation and, let's say you're in a conversation and you are coaching someone to come up with a solution themselves. Let's say that solution is not your solution.
Yeah.
What should the leader do next?
That's a great question.
Should they keep prying? Should they keep asking? Or should they stand back and let them run with it?
Well, a couple things. That's a great question because I hear that question a lot. Because right away you're fighting up against, well, that's not how I would do it. Right? As a leader, I'm going, well, that's a stupid way. What do you mean? So I'm going to employ curiosity again. Really? That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. Tell me a little bit more about how you came up with that idea. So I'm going to be curious. I want to hear, because what if you bring up something that I never thought? I went, wow, that's a great idea. Okay, so that's one. But what happens if you come up with an idea that I'm like, oh no, that I know just because of experience, time, whatever. I'm still going to ask that question, but I might say, let me ask you, if you did this, what would happen if? So I might be introducing to you some obstacles that I think maybe you might not have considered.
That's good.
Okay. The third way that I would say is if I know that that's absolutely not a good idea, I'd probably say, I hear what you're saying. it might be an ideal for something down the road, but right now I think that's misaligned from what our goal is. But let me tell you why I think it's misaligned. And then I can still have a conversation with you. So I think there's maybe 3 or 4 different ways to approach that.
That's so good.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we're going to start wrapping it up. Can you give an example, or maybe like a quick story of a conversation or coaching conversation that you've had? Because you've been a coach for a long time and you've helped a lot of leaders become coaches, myself included, that has drastically changed the way that we interact with people, not just for employees, but also my family, with friends. I've had coaching conversations with, friends who are trying to think about careers. Friends? They are friends. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just a good example is last week or a few weeks ago, I went to lunch with a friend who's considering leaving his career and starting a new one. And it turned into a coaching conversation,
nice.
Where he walked away with homework to consider, or we're going to meet again next month and talk about it. So could you give a story of a conversation that you were having with someone that you followed all of these and it just turned out perfect? Or like, what would be a perfect scenario? And then the second part of that is, do you have any examples of where it didn't? Yes.
Okay. You're putting me on the spot here. Okay.
You put me on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I was coaching a plant manager out of state who had some pretty strong anger issues, and it needed to change. Thankfully, he was very open to coaching. Because if he wasn't, I don't think he would have been able to stay. But when we explained what the coaching process was like, what we were going to go through, he started really picking up the tools himself. And I think as each session went on, and again, I'm talking about coaching outside of work, but as the coaching sessions went on, he was able to share stories where he actually did certain things, and it not only impacted his employee, but impacted the team or himself. He sounded and behaved more confidently after we spent some time together. So we still stay in touch. He's really made some big strides. And then I think to hear it from his bosses to say that there's been some big changes. As far as where it didn't go well, I can tell you this: if it starts to really go downhill and I can't seem to shift it, and you can think about this from a place of employment too, where no matter how many coaching sessions, if the person is not engaged, it's not going to work. So if you're working and you're a leader at work and you've sat down, you've asked the clarifying barrier action questions, and okay, they dropped the ball, we revisit, they dropped the ball. At a certain point, you need to go, okay, obviously you're choosing. I think that's another word. I'm sorry that you're choosing not to follow through on your commitments. Do you see what I'm doing here? Is I'm putting the ball back in their court.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not saying, okay, because you're doing this, I have to do this. Okay. I'm saying because you've chosen not to follow through, the consequences are as follows. So, at that point, coaching is not effective anymore. It's got to be an engaged back and forth. To at least some extent, yeah.
No, that's great. That's a great example. Let's say a leader's listening to this and they want to become a better coach.
Yeah.
They want to start taking the steps to coaching their people and asking open-ended questions and diagnosing heal, will, skill. What's one coaching habit or thing that they could start this week to start moving in that direction?
Yeah. Quite honestly, listening. Start with just being a better listener. Let people finish their sentences. Just really quiet the internal voice that wants to either jump in and fix it, do it for them, or have any kind of judgment. Listen with curiosity. We start all of our developing coaching leader classes with just learning how to be a better listener before I can start asking questions. Catch yourself, right? And as conversations are going, tell me more about that. Even if you just ask that question, tell me more. So again, we have our developing coaching leaders class. The other thing, I watched the video, the webinar that we did. I think would get some juices going for sure to see how that can really help you in the future.
I love that. Everyone wants to be a firefighter sometimes.
That's right.
We always want to help put out the fire.
We do. And it comes from a good place, doesn't it?
Yeah, sometimes that's not our job.
Well, but the thing of it is, if we're constantly firefighting and not allowing people to be self-reliant problem solvers, we're robbing them from development.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Well, if you want to hear more about coaching or developing your own coaching habits, we do have the training that Lorraine was talking about at Frontline Developing Coaching Leaders. We have a lot of resources also on our website about coaching, especially mixed in with some other trainings as well. If you want to know more information, reach out to us. Watch the webinar. It is free. It's on the archive. We'd love to connect with you. We'd love to talk with you. I know Lorraine would love to talk with you.
If you just want to chat, happy to do so.
Absolutely. You can reach us at frontlineon.com. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time on The Frontline.